Some players that I was previously against earlier this year have now made the buy low list. Okay, if their values have fallen this far, we are willing to go out there and get them right before our trade deadlines. But first, let's recap who we had last week. Last week, we talked about Justin Fields, DJ Moore. We talked about Kyler Murray, James Conner, Zay Flowers, and Zach Charbonnet. Now, in the case of Justin Fields, DJ Moore, don't want to spend too much time on these guys. We will be talking about them later in this video. Kyler Murray, James Conner, probably not going to be able to buy them now. I mean, you saw Kyler out there on the football field, and he's actually running the football. So I think you can safely rank Kyler Murray as a top 10 quarterback in fantasy rest of season. I mean, while, yeah, he only had 6 rushing attempts on the week, he only had 30-ish. If you actually watch the game, if you even just see highlights of the game, you're going to see that Kyler Murray's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. He is completely fine, and I think we should expect the 30-40 rushing yards per game going forward. In the case of James Conner, I mean, he will continue to expand his role as the season goes on. Still think that James Conner is a locked and loaded top 24 running back that we can start every single week. I'm just not going to put him on this buy low video again because, honestly, his value is probably about where it should be now. In the case of Zay Flowers, this was a wide receiver that I didn't draft a lot. I didn't love him as a prospect. I was the idiot drafting JSN and Quentin Johnston ahead of him. But nonetheless, this was a player that we are looking at consistent volume from. And really, we are just kind of hoping that this passing offense is going to get better compared to what they've been so far this season. And Flowers, yes, in this week, he gets you 73 receiving yards. He has the 6 targets, 5 receptions. Still, I kind of use Zay Flowers as that like wide receiver 3 with upside, right? I mean, if you're going to be looking to get Zay Flowers at a low-end wide receiver 3 price tag, of course I'm a buyer. If you have to buy him at like the wide receiver 20 price, then I'm probably not about it. And then Zach Charbonnet, that last guy, we are just looking at his overall snaps and how that's trending in Seattle. And yet again this week, ladies and gentlemen, Zach Charbonnet did go out there and he led this team in overall snaps to the running back position. We'll talk about him a little more in depth later on though. But first off, let's start with a wide receiver here in Devonta Smith. Now, yes, Smith we had as that buy low candidate way earlier in this season. Whenever he was coming off weeks with 6 receiving yards, when he was coming off a week with 5 receptions for 44 receiving yards. We are looking at the profile and he checks a lot of boxes, right? And this is what we talk about nonstop. We've talked about it for years. We'll talk about it for years going into the future because it's very simple. If you can identify a young, proven talent at the wide receiver position, this isn't Jamison Williams, who's never shown anything at the NFL level, right? No, we are talking about someone that has proven that they are one of the better wide receivers in the NFL, which Devonta Smith has. You go back to his time at Alabama, his final season there, he puts up arguably one of the best collegiate wide receiver seasons of all time. Then he goes to Philly and he cements himself as one of the best young wide receiver talents in the NFL. So we have the talent box checked. On top of this, you're looking at Devonta Smith as a wide receiver in a great offense. So we have 2 of the 3 boxes that we are looking at. The last box that is yet to be checked from Devonta Smith, which is very frustrating, is he just hasn't been seeing a ton of target volume so far this season. If you're looking at Smith, we've had a few weeks where, yes, I mean, it's a beautiful stat line. Week 1, 10 targets. Against Washington, you get 9. Against the Jets, you have 11 targets. But you also have some stinkers mixed in. You have a few games with 5 targets. Yeah, I mean, this past week, you only had 3 targets against the Dallas Cowboys. I apologize. Right before the bye week, of course. Now, going forward, we need to ask ourselves, can Devonta Smith see more targets in this Philly offense? My answer to that question is yes, based off the historical splits we have seen with and without Dallas Goedert. Now, trust me, I drafted way more Dallas Goedert this season than I did Devonta Smith. So it's very sad and it is very frustrating on my end to see the Dallas Goedert injury. However, if you are a Devonta Smith fantasy drafter, you should probably be kind of, I don't want to say excited, but it's a good thing for Smith. If we're going to go through and look at Smith over the past 2 seasons, he has played 21 games with Dallas Goedert. In those 21 games, he has averaged about 7.3 targets per contest. However, the 5 games that you had with no Dallas Goedert, keep in mind, that's the end of last season. That's when Devonta Smith went out there, and that's when he had his big-time breakout. Smith averaged 8.4 targets per game. He went from 62 receiving yards per game, which would put him on pace to be about a 1,000-yard wide receiver per season, to 84 receiving yards per game, which puts him on pace to be a 1,400-yard receiver year in and year out. So he's a young, proven talent. He is in a great offense, and I believe that he will see more target volume now that you have the Dallas Goedert injury. That is someone that I am willing to buy. Now, we can talk about Justin Fields just a little more in depth here because this was someone on our buy low video last week. And y'all know I've been a Justin Fields quote-unquote hater for years. I was saying the Bears possibly should have looked at drafting a quarterback in last year's draft, yada, yada, yada. People clowned us on it, claiming that Justin Fields was possibly MVP this year. I mean, y'all remember the craziness before this season. I still want to stand by. I don't think that Justin Fields is a great real-life quarterback, ladies and gentlemen. A lot would have to change for me to change my mind on that. But with Justin Fields, what I can stand by is he is a phenomenal fantasy quarterback. Unbelievable fantasy option. Going back to what we were talking about with Kyler Murray last week, you're looking for those quarterbacks that have rushing upside. So if I'm going to look at Justin Fields, a quarterback that broke rushing records last season, plus the guy that before the injury had 46, 57, 25, 47 rushing yards, 59 rushing yards. Really, I mean, if you're looking at the floor that you're getting from a rushing yardage perspective from Justin Fields every single week, should expect about 40 rushing yards, which if you convert that over to passing yardage totals, that's like you take Justin Fields' overall passing statistics and add 100 passing yards every single week to him. If you look at the Justin Fields injury, it looks like he should be good to go this upcoming week. Now, I'm not necessarily expecting him to be a great passer of the football, of course, with a pretty serious thumb injury on his throwing hand. But am I trading for him for that reason? Probably not. And looking at the value that you have currently with Justin Fields, he's currently QB 12 in our community rankings over on flogfantasy.com. I want to reiterate, I don't create these community rankings. We get all the data points that y'all submit to us. I've had over 100,000 data points y'all have submitted over the past 2 weeks. And I want to say this is the best place that you can find realistic trade values and realistic fantasy football expectations right now, just because we can go through so much data. But with Justin Fields, he's at QB 12. He is directly ahead of Joshua Dobbs, Jared Goff, and directly behind Sam Howell. I would trade any of these quarterbacks for Justin Fields, even if Fields were to miss this week, worst case scenario, and we have to go stream a quarterback from the waiver wire. Now, going over to what we have with our next guy, I want to look at Evan Ingram here just for a minute. Now, going over to the community rankings on flogfantasy.com, Evan Ingram is right in between guys like Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Sam Howell, just to give you an idea of where he is currently being valued. And with Evan Ingram coming off a horrendous week, right? You're going up against the 49ers. You see a total of 12 receiving yards. If you're playing in a non-PPR format, you get 1.2 points out of Evan Ingram here. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, nobody in Jacksonville scored any points going up against arguably the best defense in the NFL, or one of the best defenses in the NFL with the 49ers. But what I want to look at is the underlying volume that we have seen from Evan Ingram. Because if you are looking at Evan Ingram here, this is a player that had 7 targets in this game. And we just get further confirmation that Calvin Ridley is nothing. Calvin Ridley in this game goes out there and sees 3 total targets, whereas Evan Ingram on the season now has 68 targets in Jacksonville. And while it's very frustrating that he has scored a total of 0 touchdowns, we know that touchdowns are going to be the most volatile statistic in fantasy football from a week-to-week, year-to-year perspective. What we need to be doing is chasing volume, preferably volume in good offenses, and touchdowns will come. It seems like touchdowns are easy to predict. In reality, they're not, ladies and gentlemen. There's been so much math that has proven this, that we want to be going with the underlying volume. Of course, if you're playing in Pittsburgh, you're going to be significantly less likely to score a touchdown than if you were in Kansas City, right? But if you're in a good offense, let's chase that volume. And with Ingram, he's had 68 targets this season. The only tight ends with more targets are TJ Hawkinson, Travis Kelce, and Sam Laporta. If you're looking at the points scored from opposing tight ends, you've had TJ Hawkinson 163, Travis Kelce 141, Sam Laporta 118. The guy at the bottom end of this list, Evan Ingram, who's actually had more targets than Sam Laporta, surprisingly, is sitting at 99 points. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be some massive shift where he's going to start scoring, a touchdown on every other target. But he can find the end zone, and if you're getting this volume, I'm fine buying in. Now, this was a running back that I did not draft at all, so it kind of seems crazy that I'm willing to jump on a collapsing ship. We did it a few weeks back as well. I don't have Tony Pollard really on any of my teams, but Pollard is a great buy low candidate. If you are looking at Tony Pollard, he has been horrendous this year. He has been one of the worst draft picks in fantasy. And just to give you some insight on why I decided to avoid Tony Pollard this season, is I was looking at a running back that was going in round 1 or 2. I was saying, well, you know what? The profile is more so a committee back. That's how he's historically been used. There are a lot of these free agent running backs that are sitting out there in the ether right now. They may bring in another RB that may split the backfield with Tony Pollard. I was flat out wrong, ladies and gentlemen. No, Kareem Hunt never went to Dallas. No, Zeke didn't re-sign with Dallas. No, Leonard Fournette did not go to Dallas. Nothing happened. All that happened is the people who were drafting Tony Pollard, not me, but they were correct with the workload. Tony Pollard goes out and he has 135 carries this season. Every single week, he is giving you a floor of about 15-ish. I don't want to go that high, but say 12 to 13 carries per game. Tony Pollard at the same time has 35 targets this season. So you're getting that floor from about, say, 3 to 4 targets per game with this Pollard profile as well. That workload itself is extremely encouraging. Now, of course, with Tony Pollard, he has not done much with this workload whatsoever. If you're looking at all running backs in the NFL to have 35 targets this season and 135 rushing attempts, you're looking at Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, and Joe Mixon. Then you add in Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard at the same time is dead last here in fantasy points scored, but he has the volume. The volume doesn't really look like it's going anywhere. Now, I understand Rico Dowdle scored the touchdown this past week, and we all thought it was going to be a smash spot for Tony Pollard against the Giants. But if you look at when he did score that touchdown, it was when the game was completely out of hand. It was like with 2 minutes left in the contest when every single Dallas Cowboy player of importance was standing on the sideline, including Tony Pollard. And going forward, if you're going to look at the schedule for Pollard, it is extremely favorable, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if you're looking at the price tag, heading over to the rankings on flogfantasy.com, like I said, these aren't my rankings. These are the community rankings. You have Tony Pollard directly in front of Tank Dell, DJ Moore, directly behind Kyron Williams and Tua. And if I am mapping this out, if I were to be making a trade here, I would be fine trading Tank Dell for Tony Pollard. Even if you look at projections this next week, you can go over to Underdog Fantasy right now and see that you have Tony Pollard sitting at 61.5 rushing yards. Tank Dell sitting at about 49.5 receiving yards. Now, I personally prefer going more than 49.5 receiving yards with Tank Dell, but that's besides the point. The point is, when you're looking at this type of volume that you can project out every single week, this is a player that has a floor that you like to see. This is a player that can start scoring the ball more, given that he has the volume in a good offense. I'm not a fan, but at this price, it's kind of ridiculous. Now, if you want to say, Mason, that's obnoxious, I clearly want more than 49.5 receiving yards on Tank Dell. You do you. You can find that link to Underdog in the comment section in the description. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, a Joe Burrow special pick'em more than less than half a total yard for Thursday night. But our last guy here will be Zach Charbonnet. Going to be very brief. With Charbonnet, this is the third consecutive week that he has led this backfield in snaps. With Charbonnet, no, he is not a running back that is going to be taking over and be more valuable straight up than a player like Kenneth Walker. But what we are seeing is a defined role for Charbonnet where he is the third down and the 2-minute drill running back. He is literally seeing 100% of snaps on third down, and we have a large enough sample to say this will be the case going forward. Now, with Charbonnet, this kind of usage as a receiver, seeing 5 targets this past week, makes him one of those desperate plays if you really needed a running back, right? I mean, if you're dealing with the multitude of injuries, if you have players on bye, if you wanted to throw Charbonnet into your RB2 spot and send up a prayer that he would do something, maybe does, maybe gets you there, kind of like Kareem Hunt. However, what we are getting Zach Charbonnet on our teams for is just the off chance where if you were to see a Kenneth Walker injury, I believe Charbonnet could be a league winner in fantasy because he has proven himself as a receiver. He has the frame to be a 3-down back as well. Now, with that being said, am I going out there and am I trading a considerable amount straight up for Charbonnet? Of course not. What you would do instead is if you're going to look to make any deal and you notice that your opponent has Zach Charbonnet down there on your bench, you just go, hey, throw in Zach Charbonnet and I'll get it done. And they're not going to say, oh no, I love Zach Charbonnet, I want to keep the guy. No, of course they'll just do the deal. He's just a little throw in. So don't be treating Zach Charbonnet as the main entree and going out there and pursuing him directly. But if you are making another trade and you can include him as that side dish and get him for free, definitely something I am looking at. But I think that's all I have for y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And of course, if you wanted to go take more than 49.5 receiving yards for Tank Dell this Sunday, you can find that link to Underdog with the description, the comment section. Promo code FLUCK, 100% a positive match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you and really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.